So picking up where we left off, thinking of the effect of divorce on children. And a lot of the research compares children being in an intact family to being in a step family. And by intact family, we mean a child living in a family with two biological parents. And overall, the research has found that children living in step families tend to be worse off compared to children in intact families. And this is worse in terms of education, cognition, emotional aspects, and also behaviors. However, it's important to note that it's not just being in a step family per se, but it's that if a child is in a step family, that means that they have experienced their parents' breakup, which could be stressful, detrimental. They've also lived in a single parent household, which could have fewer resources, and that could contribute to all these different outcomes. Right, so it's important to sort of see the big picture in this case. At the same time, you can imagine that there could be effects of being in a step family. And there's research that shows that maybe step parents are less invested, they give less to stepchildren versus biological children that they had either in that new relationship or from a prior relationship. Other research in this article talks about that children can do really well when they have a high quality relationship with both their resident stepfather and that non-resident biological father. And that there's research that shows that stepfathers, rather than it being an adversarial relationship like in some movies, in some popular culture, but that they can act as father allies, so helping that stepchild maintain a relationship with the non-resident biological father, so supporting that relationship. The other aspect is that the article brought up quite a bit of information about areas in the research that need further development. And these are just a few of the examples. One is that most of the research on stepfamilies has focused on children, so people under age 18, but it's important to look into what stepfamily relationships are like for adult children, particularly if we think about how it takes a bit longer to become an adult. And this could be either people that were in stepfamilies as children and now they're getting older, or we can think about children of adult divorce. So as we talked about last class a little bit, or was in the article from last class, that divorce rates are actually higher for older people, higher for baby boomers. So maybe people's parents get divorced when they're already adults. So how does that influence relationships? Similarly, we think about, do step parents support young adults financially or otherwise? And we can even go further through the life course and think about old age support, old age care. How does stepchild relationship work in terms of that? Right? Are people going to be at a disadvantage if they need help with disability in later life? And then there's also, to make this distinction between remarriage and a legal marriage versus a long-term cohabitation that's like that's marriage like, right? How does that make a difference for the formation of new families? Okay, come back to that. So these were the objectives that we had today. Managed to get through them quickly because it's just been pure lecture today. So hopefully you are able to complete these. Explain what it means that stepfamilies are incompletely institutionalized. Explain why second or higher order marriages are less stable. Describe how the status is ambiguous. And identify some areas of research that are underdeveloped. If you have any questions, comments, concerns, I have also posted a link to a forum post below. The other thing I wanted to talk about, since we have the time today, is just to give a little bit of general feedback on midterm part 1 that I don't believe I've had a chance to give you in class. So first of all is to read the questions carefully and make sure you're answering the full question. Right? So some folks messed up on this one, the transition to adulthood question, right? So I needed you to explain what does that mean that it's delayed and do the larger social forces. So some people only answered that second question and they did not get full credit. And the same was true for this Next question about culturally dominant heterosexual dating practices. You need to answer all parts of the question. Another thing I want to note is to make sure that your answer reflects class content, not outside research, not outside reading. So part of this is showing me that you understand, but also showing me that you can draw on specific examples from class. For part 1, not so much for part 2, yes, you have to answer all the questions, but you also don't want to overreach and maybe end up saying something that's incorrect. So don't give too much, just answer the questions posed. Another thing that some folks struggled on was questions that are why questions. And by why, it's more like what is the process that led to the phenomenon, right? So why has family declined? What are the things that preceded family decline? What are the reasons why family decline has happened, as an example? So hopefully for the final, when I ask some obviously different content, but similarly written questions, that will be clearer to you. And I will give you, I will hand back part 2. I'll give you detailed feedback for that. But if you want to know more about what you got wrong on part 1, let me know. Okay, so you can watch these videos as many times as you need to, and if you have any questions or concerns, it's a forum post, but otherwise the credit for today's class just is from watching these videos, visiting the Sakai site, and Sakai will show me if you viewed them or not. All right, happy Thanksgiving!